As I'm sure you know, Mike Portnoy is back in Dream Theater, and I wasn't sure this day was ever going to happen. It's very cool. This is the lineup of Dream Theater that I grew up with and that I really fell in love with originally. So I thought in honor of Mike Portnoy coming back, I would share my top 10 Portnoy moments in Dream Theater. Now, this isn't going to be a lesson. I'm not going to show notation or talk about the theory or anything like that. I'm just kind of sharing some moments of Portnoy in Dream Theater that I really love. If you love prog rock and metal, this is the place to be. I have hundreds of lessons covering all kinds of topics. So subscribe, hit the bell notification, come hang out on the Discord channel. Links to all of that is in this video's description. Let's get to it. First up is a groove that has to be on this list. This is the intro to 6 O'Clock off of Awake, and this is a classic Mike Portnoy groove. Kind of covers a lot of the different techniques that he uses when he's grooving. There's lots of hi-hat work, which is something I'll talk about in a few of these other grooves as well. Interesting snare placement. It's a really strong focus on feel and groove, and that's one thing that I really love about Portnoy's playing. Not that he's the most insanely technical drummer ever, but he was always playing the right parts in Dream Theater's music, the parts that really enhance the music, and in this case, this groove is kicking off this entire song and this entire album. And this isn't really a personal favorite song of mine from Dream Theater, not even one of my favorite songs on Awake, but this is such a cool groove and it deserves to be on this list. Next up are these monstrous fills in As I Am. This one I have a little bit of a personal bias towards because As I Am was the first Dream Theater song I ever heard, and this is a classic example of Mike Portnoy's flashy fills, the kind of cliche, hand against feet thing, 2 in the hands, 2 in the feet, 4 in the hands, 2 in the feet, that kind of a thing that Portnoy does all the time. It's almost a meme at this point, but he's really tasteful as to where he's using them, and in this case, it's used to really build up the tension in the song. He's grooving throughout most of the song, and when it's time to let loose, he just goes for it. A really good example of when to put in the big flashy fills. Number 3, and these are in no particular order by the way, is this hi-hat groove from the Dance of Eternity. I talked about the hi-hat with the 6 O'Clock groove, and one of my favorite elements of Portnoy's drumming is his use of hi-hats. He's always using the hi-hat to accent different things in a really unique way, and in this case you have these higher notes in the guitar that pedal off the A string, well, guitar and bass, and he's accenting those with the hi-hat, and it really creates this driving energy. He could have accented those with snare drum or kick drum or some other instrument like a cymbal, and actually later in this groove he starts using the splash cymbal too, but the use of hi-hat just builds up so much energy here, ramping up to the next section. Number 4 is this groove underneath the solo in Constant Motion. This also has really great use of hi-hat, but what I really like about this is that it's underneath the solo, but it's not just like a straight groove. A lot of times with the guitar solo, it's like, here, I'll just play a riff and kind of pound out a beat for the guitarist to shred over. And in this case, Dream Theater creates something really intricate and unique for John to play over. It has a ton of energy, and a lot of that is due to the drum part. I just love the way it's orchestrated across the whole kit. Once again, cool hi-hat work. There's some great little tom fills here and there as well. Just a really nice backing track for this solo. Number 5 is this section from The Test That Stumped Them All. This is at 3 minutes and 20 seconds into the song, and it's over this 7/8 groove. And this 7/8 part actually happens a number of times throughout the song as a transition section, but this is my favorite drum part that happens here, although there are some cool ones earlier in the song as well. There's some bigger fills that are fun, but I really like the way that this grooves. It makes the odd meter feel really natural, and there's these really cool ride cymbal dings in there as well. Just a really interesting and unique groove. Number 6 is the beginning of the instrumental section in Metropolis. This is another really famous Mike Portnoy groove, and what I love about this is how natural the odd time signatures feel. This 3/4 to 7/8 could have felt really weird and jarring, but Portnoy's groove makes it feel natural. And I really love the ride cymbal that plays in the second groove over this part that kind of goes over the bar line. Just a really well orchestrated drum part to make these odd time signatures feel better. Number 7 is another one that had to be on this list. This is the intro for Honor Thy Father off of Train of Thought, and it starts with those classic Portnoy drum fills again, but what I really love about this intro section is the grooves that he's choosing here. So there's this really basic guitar riff happening over and over again, and then Mike is hinting at all these different grooves over that, so all these sort of different rhythmic illusions. He's playing on the offbeats, he's playing like the snare on 1 and 3, and then he kind of eventually gets to a straightforward groove, and it builds all this tension up right until it breaks free and the whole band is playing in a more straightforward 4/4 groove. This is the perfect example of how much the drums can really influence a part, because this riff is really basic and on its own it's nothing special, but when you add it to this weird drum part it becomes something more. Another good example of this technique is the intro to the Mirror off of Awake, but I really like how it's done here in Honor Thy Father. This one had to be number 8 because it's from Octavarium.
Just like you.
This is that funky section from the middle of Octavarium. And what I love about this is that it's a very different kind of thing for Dream Theater. We don't usually think of like drum and bass just together in Dream Theater kind of locking in together. But Portnoy is really good at grooving, and so is Mayung in this case. And it's just a great foundation that it lays for this whole section of music. And it's not a complicated groove by any means, but it just feels good. Number 9 is from the last song that Portnoy has played on in Dream Theater. This is the intro for The Count of Tuscany, which is kind of a Dream Theater classic at this point. And there's a couple of things I really love about this. First, you still have those groovy odd time signatures, you have the big fills, and you really have the energy of Portnoy. He has such an energy and aggression in his playing and a passion in his playing, and you can hear it, especially in the beginning of this song. But the main thing I want to talk about with this one is Portnoy's drum sound, just the sound of his drums. On these later Dream Theater albums that he played for, kind of from Scenes from a Memory on, his drum sound is one of my favorites of any album ever, and especially on Black Clouds and Silver Linings. I think that's kind of where it reached its peak. I don't think it's, the best Dream Theater album by any stretch of the imagination, but just the drum sound and the mix on it. I love the way it sounds. Portnoy is really good at engineering the drums, and obviously he wasn't doing the mixing or anything like that, but just kind of figuring out the right drum sounds. It sounds powerful and big and modern, but it also feels natural and it feels like it's being played by a human. A really, really good example of a great drum sound. And finally, number 10. This is of course the outro for Finally Free, the last song off of Scenes from a Memory, and this is an example of a Mike Portnoy drum solo, but not like a free-form drum solo, one that's kind of in the context of a composition, and it's just a really great way to end off this album. It kind of brings that chaos as the album fades out, and I really love the live version of this as well from Live Scenes from New York. I think that's really cool. But there's lots of great Mike Portnoy ideas in here. There's some classic fills, but it's done inside the composition. It really works well with everything else that's going on. So there are my top 10 Mike Portnoy drum moments in Dream Theater, and these are subject to change, but these are just the ones that I picked right now. I'd be curious to see what you guys pick as your top 10, so please let me know in the comments. I'll be doing some more Dream Theater content soon, especially as it gets closer to the release of the next album. I'm sure I'll do a big analysis video whenever they release a single, an hour-long thing that takes me, 60 hours to make or whatever. But until then, subscribe to this channel, hit the bell notification, all that stuff, and I'll see you for the next video. You stay proggy.